Hello and welcome to Wavescan, the international DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written in Indianapolis by Dr. Adrian Peterson and produced in the studios of WRMI Shortwave in Miami, Florida. I'm Jeff White. Today on Wavescan, radio broadcasting in the land of the mountain lion, Part 4, Relay Services, and our Australian DX report. Wavescan presents Focus on Africa, a year-long series of reports about shortwave broadcasting and listening on the African continent. From the very earliest days, the various radio broadcasting services in Sierra Leone were very dependent upon the relay of available programming from other sources as a supplement to that which was produced locally in their own studios. For a lengthy period of nearly three-quarters of a century, the BBC London was heard over local distribution in Freetown. Beginning at the time when the cable radio service was implemented in 1934, most of the programming that was provided by wire to the connected homes in Freetown was an off-air relay from the BBC in London, their Empire service, and their services to Africa on shortwave. The cable system was in operation for some 30 years, and the BBC programming was piped into the rediffusion system with the insertion of very little local productions, and that quite frequently just for special events. For a total of 66 years, the BBC programming was heard in Sierra Leone consecutively via cable radio and experimental shortwave from Freetown, and then SLBS itself from the shortwave station at Hill Station, and then from Goderich and Waterloo, as well as on medium wave from Goderich. In recent years, right up to the present time, the BBC is still heard on radio in Sierra Leone, though now via dedicated FM relay stations in Freetown and the regional city Kanema. According to the information in several editions of the World Radio TV Handbook, the next relay service heard in Sierra Leone was provided by Radio Moscow. An off-air relay of their news bulletin in English was heard on shortwave and medium wave at 1700 UTC daily for a period of some 15 years, beginning around 1968. This programming was carried by all of the active transmitters in Sierra Leone at the time, medium wave from Goderich and shortwave from Goderich and Waterloo. Shortly after the commencement of the relays of English news from the Radio Moscow World Service, a similar relay of news from the Voice of America was introduced into the programming from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Service. Initially, this was one bulletin of VOA news each day, though beginning around 1975, the duration of the daily relays from the VOA was increased. The World Radio TV Handbook shows the scheduling of VOA news at 1530 and 1600 UTC on all active transmitters in Goderich and Waterloo, shortwave and medium wave. However, it's quite possible that this relay from the Voice of America was actually continuous for at least an hour back during that era. The SLBS relay of VOA programming ended simultaneously with the end of relay programming from the BBC and Radio Moscow, though these days VOA is heard on FM in Freetown 102.4 MHz. There are no known FM relays in Freetown from Radio Moscow. The experimental programming from Deutsche Welle in Germany was on the air irregularly from the 250 kilowatt shortwave transmitter at Waterloo in 1974 and 1975. Station announcements in this Deutsche Welle programming were given in English, French, and German, and the broadcasts identified the transmitter location as Waterloo. These test broadcasts also included news and music. No information is given as to how the Deutsche Welle programming from Germany was received for rebroadcast in Sierra Leone. It would be possible for this programming to be on pre-recorded discs or tape, or on live relay from regular Deutsche Welle programming, or via telephone lines from Germany, or even by local production at the SLBS studios in Freetown. However, two key items in the programming that was broadcast from Waterloo on behalf of Deutsche Welle would seem to indicate that the programming was prepared in the Deutsche Welle studios in Cologne in Germany, and apparently fed to Freetown via a live relay from a communication transmitter. The inclusion of the Waterloo identification would indicate specific programming, not a relay of regular programming, and the inclusion of news bulletins would indicate a live relay. It is known that on a few occasions over the years, Deutsche Welle programming was carried via unannounced communication transmitters. We could also mention that the United Nations also produced radio programming for broadcast into Sierra Leone, as did the Hirondelle Foundation in Switzerland, which was also in some ways associated with the United Nations. On May 18, 2000, a total consignment of radio equipment was imported into Sierra Leone, and just 4 days later, the FM transmitter was inaugurated on 103 megahertz. This new station was identified as Radio UNAMSIL, Radio United Nations Mission to Sierra Leone. Soon afterwards, a 1 kilowatt Harris shortwave transmitter was inaugurated on 6140 kilohertz, though the signal was usually noted slightly off channel on 6138 kilohertz. The studios for this new station were installed in the Mamiyoko Hotel at Aberdeen Beach, Freetown, and the station was on the air 24 hours daily. 9 years later, that is, in 2009, the station left the air. Some of the programming was absorbed into the official SLBS government station, and some of the equipment was donated to a local public service radio station. A few international radio monitors were fortunate enough to receive a form letter, QSL, in response to reception reports on their shortwave channel. However, a couple of years before the termination of Radio UNAMSIL, another organization, Hirondelle of Switzerland, established a radio broadcasting service for Sierra Leone. This organization was in some ways associated with the United Nations, and they established a radio broadcasting studio in the Fora Bay College of the University of Sierra Leone in Freetown. This new broadcasting station was inaugurated in February 2007 under the slogan Cotton Tree News. In the center of Freetown, there was a large and very old cotton tree, several hundred years old, and it's a national symbol for Sierra Leone, commemorating freedom for their people. Initially, the broadcast of the programming from Cotton Tree News was heard in Freetown on FM, and throughout Sierra Leone via a relay on international shortwave. The FM service was on the air 24 hours daily with 2 channels in use, 103 and 107.3 megahertz. The broadcast on shortwave was via the BBC relay station on Ascension Island for just half an hour daily on the channel 9525 kilohertz, though another channel, 13760 kilohertz, was in interim usage for a short period of time. 2 years after the inauguration of Cotton Tree on shortwave, a replacement relay was taken into usage, Rapisham in England, on 11875 kilohertz. The shortwave relays were discontinued in 2011, though the FM programming is still on the air on the single channel 107.3 megahertz. We could also mention 2 other radio stations that were part of the broadcasting scene in Sierra Leone. In 1991, a mobile transmitter under the legal government call sign for Liberia, ELBC, was on the air as the voice of peace, harmony, and reconciliation. The well-known Danish international radio monitor, Anker Petersen, states that it was operated by the West African Peacekeeping Force. This mobile transmitter was actually located not in Liberia, but just across the border in Sierra Leone. No channel is given, though, as to whether it was operating on medium wave or shortwave. Then in May 2009, the American radio magazine Monitoring Times listed a new gospel station at 10 kilowatts for use on shortwave, though it apparently never got beyond the licensing stage. Now for our identification signal today, let's listen to a historical recording of the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Service. This is from the Radio Canada International Idents and Interval Signal series. And that was the opening of a transmission there from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Service.
You're listening to Wavescan from Adventist World Radio. Send your comments and reception reports to Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the United States. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229 in the USA. Or you can email us at wavescan@awr.org. Our email once again, wavescan@awr.org.
We have some interesting news here from Argentina, from RAI, the external service of the Argentine National Radio. This comes to us from Luis Maria Barassi, director of the station, via Arnaldo Slain in Argentina. And Luis says, I have the great satisfaction of informing you that RAI, Radiodifusión Argentina al Exterior, began transmitting in the Chinese language on May 13th. The transmission schedule is the following: daily from 10 to 1100 UTC on 6060 kilohertz and 15345 kilohertz. That is a live transmission. And then the program is recorded or repeated from 0400 to 0500 UTC on 11710 kilohertz. A new Chinese program every day from RAI, Radiodifusión Argentina Exterior, and this is what it sounds like.
RAI 播送 Siempre Argentina 华语广播，由吉丽娜主持。Siempre Argentina 公共对外广播电台。
Amigos oyentes del mundo, en esta emisión de Siempre Argentina, Conexión Español, que conduce Chelo Ayala, compartiremos una importante entrevista. Ayer, lunes 13 de mayo, la radio pública al exterior...
Okay, that was a broadcast there from RAI, Argentina, marking the beginning of Chinese programming from the station. Here's another transmission, new transmission that's going on now, beginning on May 19th it began, and running until June 9th, 2013. PCJ Radio International in Taiwan will be conducting some test transmissions from Trincomalee in Sri Lanka. The time is 1300 to 1400 UTC. The dates are May 19th, which of course has already passed, but also May 26th, June 2nd, and June 9th, from 1300 to 1400 UTC, on the frequency of 11750 kilohertz in the 25-meter band. The target area is East and Southeast Asia, with a power of 125 kilowatts and an azimuth of 45 degrees. That's PCJ Radio International via Trincomalee, Sri Lanka. And on that program, each week, Andy Sennett will be doing a 15-minute version of Focus Asia Pacific. This will be followed by a special Happy Station show for Southeast Asia and East Asia. And Keith Perrone of PCJ Radio tells us that the first transmission on May 19th was very successful. Using 125 kilowatts, we had no problem to cover Southeast Asia, East Asia, and part of the Pacific. The only co-channel interference we had was in Eastern Australia. The co-channel interference was with Radio Havana, Cuba, on the 11750 kilohertz in Spanish to Latin America. We also managed to get a decent signal into parts of East Africa and a good signal into Reunion Island and Moscow. Thanks to Keith Perrone for that information. By the way, we received a very interesting QSL calendar, which is produced by the Rhein-Main Radio Club in Germany. It's a non-profit project to support DXing, and it's very interesting. It's a 2013 calendar. Every month has a picture of a few QSL cards, and some of them are historical cards, some of them are more current. but it's a very nice thing to hang up on your wall. The price of a copy is €15 or $20, and if you, they also accept PayPal, since bank transfers can be expensive, or you can put $20 inside an envelope and send it to them. But the details can be found on their homepage, www.rmrc.de. That's www.rmrc.de from the Rhein-Main Radio Club. Thanks to Dr. Harold Gabler for that information. And they sent us a copy of that calendar here, and it's very interesting, and we gave it away at the NASB meeting, the National Association of Shortwave Broadcasters annual meeting in Birmingham, Alabama, which took place May 15th to 17th, a very successful meeting there, and we will have a lot more information about that meeting on Wavescan for you next week.
Greetings to shortwave enthusiasts around the world. This is Bob Padula in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, with another edition of the Australian DX Report. These magazines provide news of shortwave broadcasting stations, monitoring summaries, propagation news, and other information concerning world international broadcasting. I'd just like to remind you that full detail QSLs are available for correct reports received for these episodes. The address will be given at the end of the program. And to note that all times, days and dates given in our episodes are in UTC, and we use the 24-hour time system. The episodes are compiled from resources made available by the Electronic DXpress Radio Monitoring Association, which is based here in Melbourne.
Opening our program this time, as usual, we have information from the Ionospheric Prediction Service in Sydney, New South Wales, concerning solar activity. The IPS reports that solar activity is now remaining at a low level. The 10.7 centimetre solar radio flux has dropped to 148, and the smooth equivalent sunspot number has fallen to 102. That's 102. And those figures are not expected to change dramatically in the immediate future. An effect on shortwave propagation with this low solar activity means that high frequency signals on darkness or semi-darkness paths on frequencies above about 12 megahertz on long distance routes will not be very reliable. But signals on the frequencies above about 12 megahertz on daylight paths should be satisfactory. We're currently we're moving through the sunspot cycle number 24, and it's expected that this cycle will peak towards the end of the current year, 2013. Now, first of all, some monitoring observations made here in Melbourne recently in the 31 and 22 metre bands during our post-sunrise period, and these are between 1900 and 2000. First of all, 22 metres, 13740 Radio France International from Issoudun with French programming. And on 31 metres, a number of stations, good signals. These are from 2000 to 2030. 9320, the Voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran with Arabic programming. 9325, Radio Algeria, broadcasting from the relay station in Issoudun in France in Arabic. 9390, Radio Thailand, broadcasting in English until signing off at 1958. And on 9400, another frequency for the Voice of the Islamic Republic of Iran, English from 2000. And 9420, the Voice of Greece in Greek, also from 2000. All these signals are between 2000 and 2030. 9425, the Voice of Korea, signing on at 2000 with the relay of the Korean Central Broadcasting Service, programming in Korean. and 9430, the Voice of Vietnam from the Dubaya UAE relay station in German. Stop from that frequency, 9440, China Radio International with English from the Kunming site, and 9460, the Voice of Turkey, with programs in Turkish, and 9470, China National Radio Network 1 in Chinese, of course, and 9525, China Radio International from Beijing in Russian. And we'll come back to some more monitoring observations after this. Radio Free Sarawak continues to make frequency changes almost on a daily basis. The latest frequency is 15420, which is used between 1100 and 1300 with programs in local languages for Sarawak. It's now understood, according to the Radio Bulgaria monitoring website, that these transmissions are coming from the Taiwan relay. It had previously been thought that these broadcasts were originating from Trincomalee in Sri Lanka, but it now seems as though Taiwan is the preferred location. Now, North Korea. The Voice of Korea appears to have introduced several new higher powered shortwave transmitters, and these are giving quite good reception in various parts of the world. And the new schedule has been placed on the Radio Bulgaria monitoring website, giving details of all of the current frequencies for the Voice of Korea. The programs between 0300 and 0357, these are now listed on 11735 in Spanish to Central and South America, and 13760, the same area, same language, and again on 15180 in Spanish to Central and South America. And Chinese programs to Southeast Asia, 13650 and 15105. At 0400 to 0500, 8 frequencies are in use. They are 3250 in English to Northeast Asia, 9445 English also to Northeast Asia, and again on 9730. Now that English program between 0400 and 0500 is also carried to Central and South America on 11735 and 13760 and 15180. And French to Southeast Asia, currently 13650 and 15105. Now, Voice of Korea at 0500 0600, the number of frequencies listed there. Chinese on 3250 to Northeast Asia, 9445 to the same area, 9730, and Spanish 11735 to Central and South America, 13760 to the same area, and 15180 to the same area. Finally, an English program, 15105 to Southeast Asia.
And that's all we have time for in our episode of the Australian DX Report, which came to you from Melbourne in Victoria, Australia. I'd just like to remind you that we offer full detail QSL cards showing Australian scenes and wildlife for correct reports received for these broadcasts. We also offer an email QSL service for reports sent via the internet or email. Full details about the QSL service are available at the Electronic DXpress homepage, which is simply edxp.org. So until our next program, this is Bob Padula in Melbourne in Victoria, Australia, wishing you all good listening. Thanks for being with us and good DX. See you soon.
Thank you, Bob Padula. Now, a reminder of our annual Wavescan contest, which runs during the month of July. It's as easy as ABCDE if you want to enter the contest. Part A, you list your 5 best QSLs from Africa and state briefly why they are your 5 best QSLs from Africa. Part B, photocopy your 5 best QSLs from Africa and send those copies along to us. Part C, list your 5 most wanted QSLs from Africa. Part D, send 3 reception reports on AWR relay stations in Africa or AWR relay stations broadcasting to Africa. And finally, Part E, send along 3 radio-related postcards for the Wavescan collection in Indianapolis. And we'll give you the address to send all of this to in just a moment. Music from Sierra Leone ends this edition of Wavescan, the International DX program from Adventist World Radio. Researched and written by Adrian Peterson in Indianapolis. Next week on Wavescan, the 75th anniversary of radio broadcasting in the Troubled Isles. We'll have a report from the annual meeting of the National Association of Shortwave Broadcasters, which took place recently in Birmingham, Alabama, and our Japan DX report. If you'd like to send us a reception report, we have a Wavescan QSL card available. And when you make out a reception report to Wavescan and send it to the AWR office in Indianapolis, you're invited to also send a copy to the relay station that is carrying the broadcast. In this way, you can obtain an additional QSL card for your reports. The address for Wavescan is Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. That's Wavescan, Box 29235, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46229, USA. That's also the address for your AWR Wavescan contest entries. Our email address for your comments and suggestions is wavescan@awr.org. That's wavescan@awr.org. I'm Jeff White at WRMI in Miami. Till next week, good listening, everyone.